Želim preko mog inboxa je normalno, ne razumijem.
Profesor, dobar dan.
Dobar dan, jel me čujete? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Okay, great.
hear you.
Just give me 2 minutes. I have some technical difficulties and we will start in 2 minutes, okay? Okay, thanks.
Da pokušamo da ovako direktno preko mog kompjutera odgovorimo na webek. Sad ćemo da vidimo. Sad bi trebalo da bude u posletima, ali mi nije jasno da se ne šalje, nije jasno što se dešava ovog nikad, ali to kažem da se postoji prvi put. Kad je subota, ovdje mora da bude. Da, kaže da mi otpravljeni fajl prevodila za maksimum. Mi ćemo svakako da ga pošaljemo i onda bi trebalo da nam ostane, ja se nadam, upsu. Znači, vidimo, poslite.
Ne znam da li je povezan sa...
Na projektoru se ne vidi, a što je najgore, nema je ni, znači ona ipak nije poslata, čekaj da im možemo da stavimo, ne znam zašto je prezentacija toliko velika. Ne bi trebalo, sad ćemo da stavimo u PDF. Ne da pošalju, bože, ne mogu da verujem. Ću da vidimo kako da nađemo da povežem i vas, ili ćete sesti pored mene. Pa ćemo zajedno. Kad se već jedimo. Ovde. Možemo ovako.
Profesorka!
Prijavite mi sreću. Što je nešto? Otvorim sam ga. Ovako. Znači da šerujemo. Sad, kako da vama pokažem, kako da vi se vidite ove prezentacije. Samo da vidim, možda vidite. Jeste plovne.
Profesorka!
Ne znate kako je...
Nisam nikad bila tu kada je već bilo povreda.
Da, ajde dođite sad da kod mene da rekupimo vreme, to ću morati da pitam ljudi tehnički podršeni vreme, nema nikog. Znači, svakako. Pobavno sedite kod mene. Da.
Hi folks, can we start?
Yes.
We can start.
I apologize for some technical difficulties that we have in this room. Basically, the problem is that we were not meant to work online and in person, so in a hybrid format, because it makes it much more difficult than in normal circumstances. And I also wanted to ask you that you, for those of you who are in Belgrade, situated here, that you come to the classes in person. The whole idea with this hybrid format was for your colleagues who basically are not in Belgrade due to the visa requirement to have possibility to attend these classes. It's a totally different atmosphere, and we also have some exercises when you are in person and when you are online. So please start coming to your classes, to your lessons, and we the list of attendees starting from the next week. Okay?
Yes, I'm coming in person, but on the week
weekend, I usually go home because I'm not from Belgrade. So I apologize for this weekend, but it will not happen again.
Una, I know that you are very regular, so this is what I heard. But I also know from colleagues that for them it's really very hard, to work with 1 or 2 students and then to work with the rest online. So please just respect that and come. Of course, if you are for some reason ill, you don't feel well, or as in your case, Una, you are going back home, it's okay, but please just use it as a very last resort. I don't know what's going on. Can you see the presentation?
No, but we can see your screen.
Okay, so something is happening. So I'll do it once again. I would really prefer, work on my computer. I don't know how, and there is no one from technical department to help us today with this presentation. So let me just again, give me just 2 seconds in order to find my presentation. Okay, so now I will again share the screen, share the content, and please let me know if it works. Is it visible now?
It's visible.
It's visible, but for some reason, for us who are here, we are losing it. Okay, let me try to do it from my computer. I really apologize for this inconvenience, because otherwise I won't be able, to move the slides. So let's see if we can start. But it's now my personal page.
Ability to share from your personal.
Do you know how to do it? No, because
the WebEx is something new.
I know, but the WebEx is really complicated, for use.
Share. Are you in the thing?
So can you see it now? The presentation.
Yes,
we can see it. Yes.
Okay, so we'll try to do it as it is. But in any case, I will also use my computer for us to see the presentation better. Okay, so that we can all follow, including Dushanka, yes, Dushanka, who is present. Okay, so today, once again, I apologize for this delay. For this class, what we are going to do, we are going to talk about diplomacy, but not a regular one. So because usually when we speak about the diplomacy, we speak about the different connections and also interplay between mostly states and also international organizations as main actors in international relations and international public law. However, just recently, we introduced a new term to acknowledge the reality which exists, and this is human rights diplomacy. So I will explain to you in the first part of my presentation what is human rights diplomacy, what are different actors which are very active in this field, and then we will focus on something that we call UN special procedures. So that will be a first presentation. And the second part of our presentation would be dedicated to courts and tribunals and different bodies. And we will see the composition or the structure of those bodies. And we will talk about the inclusion of women into these bodies. We will see the gender balance, whether it exists or not. And you also had basically 2 articles to read for today's class, and also to read one interview with the judges, female judges of ICJ. So I hope that you had time to do it. In any way, we will a little bit discuss those papers. So let's start with human rights. You will also have a special course on human rights, but for this regard, I wanted to share it with you very briefly, because I know that not all of you are lawyers, and even if you're lawyers, it can be that you didn't have specific course on human rights. That we, when we speak about human rights, we speak about different norms which are dedicated to psychological, first of all, and then also physical body and integrity of a person. We speak about dignity and about freedoms. And we have a catalog of rights which are very much connected with these values that we are protecting. And we have a specific area of international public law, which is called International Human Rights Law, which is dedicated exactly to human rights, to the catalog of those rights and mechanisms which we have in international arena for the protection of human rights. So we will have, as I said, a special course. We will go much more into the detail. But here, for the purpose of our today's class, it is important to understand that how we recognize human rights. I already said that we have different values that we protect by, first of all, acknowledging those rights and then protecting those rights. But also, one of the main features of human rights is that they are inalienable. What does it mean? It means that we are getting those rights from the moment that we are born, and no one can take that rights and freedoms from us. Of course, in some maybe specific circumstances, because some rights can be limited, but we will not speak about that at the moment. Another feature of human rights is that they are indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated, which means that we have different catalogs of human rights. For example, we usually speak about the first generation of human rights, the second generation of human rights, third generation of human rights, and even some scholars today speak about the fourth generation of human rights. But the whole idea is that basically we cannot override one specific group of rights over another. For example, if you speak about the right to education, in order to exercise the right to education, first of all, we have to have other rights which are respected. For example, we need to have sometimes legal documents of parents that they can enroll children at school. We also have to have educated parents, or at least because if they do not understand the value of education, some children will miss schools. They will not go, or the dropouts in a school will be very, very high. So for that, also, if we speak about political rights, of course, that everyone can vote who, of course, fulfill the conditions in that national legislation. But of course, we also know that for people who are not educated, the problem with the exercise of their rights, political rights, can be limited, or at least the choices that they are made can be limited. So we see that interrelation between human rights, and in some countries we usually neglect economic and social and cultural rights over political and civil rights. But basically, we understand now that we have poverty in many countries, that if people are living in poverty, they have limited access to their rights, and they can enjoy not rights enshrined in a catalog of human rights. And also another feature of human rights is that human rights are universal. When we say that they are universal, it means that we have a minimal catalog of human rights which exist in all countries. And on a universal level, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a main international document, which first of all gave us that catalog of human rights, but also proclaimed that they are inalienable, and all these elements that we just discussed. When we speak about the origins of human rights, we sometimes, in some books, we go back to Magna Carta Libertatum from 1215, which of course is not a document recognizing human rights, but it was, let's say, a pre-document where some basic ideas appeared in that document. But then we also have Habeas Corpus Act that was adopted in England. Then we have American and French Declaration of Human Rights, and I'm pretty sure that you are aware of these two documents, and also basic values which were proclaimed, especially in a French Declaration of Human Rights, which exists on three values, which are liberté, légalité, and fraternité, or in other words, liberty, equality, and solidarity. Then I mentioned already Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have also two covenants which were adopted in 1966 On a UN level, this is the covenant dedicated to political and civil rights, and another one on economic, social, and cultural rights. And basically, 3 of these documents are called today the Bill of Human Rights in international arena. But we also have many other human rights documents which were adopted on a UN level. And here you see some of them, and I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with those documents, such as the Convention on the Rights of the Child, then people with disabilities. We have 2 instruments which are dedicated to discrimination, to racial, and also to discrimination against women. So different documents which are relevant for the perspective of what we are talking about. And then finally, before we understand what is human rights diplomacy, is the issue of why human rights are relevant. First of all, they comprise the core values of international community, and this is what we today see when human rights are under the attack. The whole structure of different international bodies starting to blur. And this is what we see on many levels today with different conflicts, but also with non-recognition of some human rights, or with retrogression, which is also very much visible. So what we gained 70 years ago with Universal Declaration is now under attack. So this is why basically human rights and human rights diplomacy is extremely important. Another element why they are relevant is because this is the natural order. The whole international community is based on some core values. And that was the whole idea why why states started to unite and to organize, for example, to establish organizations dealing with different aspects, not only necessarily with human rights, but with some different aspects which are also relevant for human rights as well, such as, for example, the establishment of World Health Organization. And finally, it is also important that human rights can also be exposed to different limitations, to different constraints. So this is why it is important that states fulfill their international obligations and that they do not go beyond that scope which is happening in practice today. Why human rights are controversial? And they're there is discussion among different stakeholders, and especially among different states with different views, is that we don't have a definition of human rights today. The issue of implementation, what does it mean to implement human rights on a national level? Also, human rights can be in conflict with some other values which are core values for states. And here I mean mostly about, for example, state sovereignty, because we have many states claiming that human rights are endangering, first of all, not only sovereignty, but also national security of state.
But when you say we don't have a definition of human rights, how is that possible with all these documents? I mean, they are centered around definition of it. How is that impossible?
Okay, so Dušanka, I don't know, can you hear Dušanka well?
Well, a bit louder maybe would be.
Can you hear us? I mean, because
yes, I can hear you very well, but
we can hear you.
But not Dušanka, okay, because we cannot move, so Dušanka can come closer to me. Now she will be in my lap, okay? So basically, Dušanka asked how it is possible that we do not have a definition of human rights in international law. Is there any idea with this? Who would like to respond to Dušanka? And I'm so sorry, you can take the floor because we don't see you at the moment.
I mean, I answer the question myself, because without definition, there is a broad consensus among it. So I can define it my way, you can define it your way, and we can define it in general aspect. And it's more open for accepting it, I would say. But still, I mean, it's a kind of, it's more of an absurd question. How is not there a definition?
A definition. So Dušanka really asked a very good question. She already gave one answer. So there are two answers basically to this question. The first one is that when we see the international conventions and when we know the part of how they're adopted in international law, we know that it is a very long way to go because states need to accept the draft law, draft convention, sorry, they need to accept the content of these international agreements. And sometimes it's so controversial, you know, because some states can exactly see that definitions encompass something which is endangering their national security, sovereignty, and different other values which they do not want to lose. Another point is that usually in international law, it is very rare that we have definitions. So it's very rare, and it is why it is because it's hard to adopt the convention. It takes a lot of time, but then we also have a reality, which means that after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it is easier without definition to, by interpretation, include something. If we have a definition which is very strict, then it's much harder to include something that is not among the elements of that definition. So that's the reason. But what we know for human rights is those core values which they protect. So it's for us there is basically no need to have exact definition when we know what they are protecting. And if they protect dignity, if they protect liberty, if they protect freedom, if they protect integrity of a person, then we know that these are the core values that we protect by human rights. So is there any other comment or question on what we discussed so far? Anyone who would like to take the floor and maybe to say something on this first part of our presentation?
Well, for me, everything is clear for now.
Okay, great. So now we go to human rights diplomacy. So what we are talking here about, and as I said, usually you will see just the term diplomacy. Okay. Understand who are the actors and what's the topic that we are discussing. We can also speak about, for example, the environmental diplomacy, high-tech diplomacy, so on and so forth. But when we speak about diplomacy, we speak about the interrelations which exist among two or more states and international organizations itself. However, for human rights diplomacy, we also do not have one definition which is enshrined in some international document, but we can also find different definitions in by scholars in some articles. And here I put you a definition which basically encompasses exactly what human rights diplomacy is, and this is bargaining, negotiating, and advocating process involved with promoting and protecting international human rights norms and principles. And usually when we speak about human rights diplomacy, we speak about the track 1 and track 2 diplomacy. So track 1 are official channels that exist, and these are the channels that are used by states and international organizations. Track 2 diplomacy extends activity to include more other actors, such as private actors, NGOs, organizations, and also some individuals who, what we see today, can also make such a difference, and very quick difference in international arena. What is also important is that we have other meanings of human rights diplomacy, and this is that they can also take various forms, either bilaterally or multilaterally. It depends on the number of actors which are involved, so it can encompass 2 actors or more when we speak about multilateral approach. And it is also important that human rights diplomacy usually encompasses more actors, multilateral approach, and usually different actors that exist within the United Nations as the main global international organizations, which has different mechanisms to protect human rights. And this is what we will see. When it comes to states, states are, first of all, they have their representatives in different international bodies. And in those international bodies, states, they vote for different topics or for different resolutions. They also they expressed their views on some global issues which are happening. And it is also important that human rights, the states are part of international bodies. For example, the most important body within the United Nations, which deals with human rights, is Human Rights Council. And Human Rights Council comprises of 47 member states. So this is the way how those states which are members of that body basically shape the policy on a global level and how they behave and how they protect human rights. From another perspective, another actors and usual actors are international organizations. International organizations have been established in order to allow the collective action in a global arena. And also international organizations are there to provide technical assistance to states, also to shape the policy or to have their governing document, for example, Charter of the United Nations, which basically explain what are the bodies, subsidiary and principal bodies within that organization, what is the competence of that bodies, and how they can talk about different aspects, including human rights. And for example, within the organizations, we have in Geneva High Commissioner for Human Rights. This is the exact example of how one organization can shape globally human rights, because what the commissioner can do, not only provide technical assistance and support, but also going to states, issuing different reports, warning different countries about the systemic violation of human rights, and also taking part in different forums where he can engage himself with different organizations. I say himself because at the moment we have a male, we have a commissioner, Turk, so he is a man, but not necessarily. Yeah. Another actor are NGOs. NGOs are extremely important for human rights diplomacy because all states, they want to pretend that their human rights records are much better than they are. And the problem is that in order to act in international arena, you really need to know the exact situation in certain country. So this is why we have NGOs, organizations. First of all, we have organizations which are acknowledged by the ECOSOC, or the main body of the United Nations, which is Economic and Social Council. And organizations are taking part in conferences, sometimes even in meetings which are dedicated to the draft conventions. But also NGOs, they have a very important role in basically providing information on the ground. So what's really going on in certain country from one perspective, and from another one, they also provide or submit something which is called shadow reports. Shadow reports or alternative reports, which shows that the state record is not so good as every single state on this world wants to present in international arena. And of course, they have a very significant role in providing information to special procedures, but we will come to that, explain what it is. And of course, you can imagine that we have some individuals who are so important from the perspective of providing a lot of, let's say, providing human rights and also shaping the policy. For example, I'm pretty sure that you are all familiar with Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a wife of the American president at the time. She was so determined to, first of all, to draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also to convince states to vote for that resolution, which is even today, after so many years, the main document on human rights that we have. We also know about the Nelson Mandela There are many other actors. I put here some recent individuals who are also very much active. We know for George and Noble Clooney and for their foundation, Angelina Jolie, who is also very much active with UNHCR and with refugees. So there are also different other individuals who are very much present in the international arena. They are taking part in conferences. They are voting. They're trying to convince states to vote for certain resolutions, and so on and so forth. And basically, when we speak about the types of diplomacy, apart from this track 1 and track 2, which is the let's say the type which is according to the actors who are providing and who are using the diplomacy, human rights diplomacy as a mean. We also have public diplomacy and private diplomacy. Public diplomacy is something that we see in international organizations, in their bodies, where, for example, if states go to a General Assembly and they vote for certain resolution, they can also take part in discussion, they can express their understanding of certain issues, and basically everything that they do is subject to public scrutiny and comments. And you remember that recently we had President Trump a month ago when he was at the General Assembly, and when he spoke about migrants and the asylum seekers and refugees and the whole scheme international that we have, and his speech gained a lot of attention. So this is the way of how his speech is also exposed to public scrutiny, because then the journalists are writing about it. There are many debates on what basically his message was, and so on and so forth. But this is public diplomacy. This is something that we can also see, for example, if we follow the website of the United Nations and all meetings which are happening there. Private diplomacy is something which is happening behind the scene. This is something that we approach other states when we want to achieve something, and it's not at the front line. And for example, today there is advocacy on the part of some special procedures and also non-governmental organizations for trying to convince states that they include in crimes against humanity. This is the draft law, which is in a preparation for such now a long time. And now we are entering the final stage of the adoption of this document, that we should also recognize something which is called gender apartheid. And gender apartheid is what is basically happening in Afghanistan. So the situation with Afghanistan, with the lack of access to many services and rights for women and girls, is of such a scale that many actors believe that this is a gender apartheid. However, the problem in international arena is that apartheid was for such a long time dedicated to South Africa and to racial apartheid, with the elements of colonialism, for example, which are in the definition. And now you have also South Africa, which do not want to get that legacy to another type of apartheid. So what would be the private diplomacy? That, for example, you request meetings with South Africa to try to convince them to support this whole wave of those who are supporting this idea. And we have different other examples of private diplomacy, but private diplomacy is something that we will not see, and we cannot scrutinize. We don't know that it's happening behind the scene, but it's also very important because it can be a very efficient way of convincing, negotiating, because you remember that we said it's negotiation and bargaining. States are basically trying to wait what for them would be much more important to, for example, recognize the gender apartheid and to be recognized among first states in international community to basically lead this process, or you believe that this is really a legacy of South Africa and that there are different ways, other ways to, in a way, pay attention to the situation in Afghanistan. When we speak about these channels of diplomacy, usually and mostly they're summit diplomacy, which means that these are diplomacies which include the most important figures in one country, such as the president, the speaker of the parliament. So those basically ministers. So it is on a very high level. And this summit diplomacy is important because we have leaders, and if they promise something, then that promise is taken. And this is why this is one of the most common ways for diplomacy. Counter summits are meetings by civil society actors, and they use the meetings together and to the barriers and what they see that should be done in order to get better records and to achieve certain goals. It depends what is at stake. But we also speak about the network diplomacy. And this is when we have the representatives of international organizations to make connection with NGOs. And for them, NGOs can really be very supportive, not only in terms of speaking at certain gatherings, but also from the perspective of implementation of different norms and different principles on a national level. And we also have a conference diplomacy. This is the diplomacy which is usually organized by organizations, either universal or regional, and it is sometimes they are attended by the most important leaders, but sometimes it can be on a lower level. And recently we introduced something which is called pledged conferences. What does it mean? It means that we gather. It can be a conference on a high level or a less high level, but at the same time, we pledge. We say, we promise to do this and this in this time period. And then, for example, I don't know if you know that 2 years ago, we had a second forum on refugees in Geneva. And that was exactly, this is example of these pledging conferences, where all actors, they stood up, they have the statement for 2 to 3 minutes, and not longer than that because we have many actors. And then they say, okay, we promise to do that in a 3 years period of time. Each year, we will submit pledge to inform you what we did. Because we are not waiting for 3 years that you do something, we expect from you each year that you make a progress. And it's a very good way of achieving something in international arena. Why? Because otherwise you do anything implemented on the level. Very good. Because it's 100% successful, but at least it's shameful for states after 3 years to stay to stand up in front of all other actors and to say we didn't do anything. What is extremely important is that when we speak about the representation among all these actors, we see a lack of women in some of them, and for such a long time, we had this notion that we should have a parity or equal representation on male and female representatives in diplomacy. However, according to some last statistic, only around 20% of females are in diplomacy globally. So the record for each state can be different. But even those who are attending conferences for international organizations, they usually or sometimes lack representation. And here I show you, I showed one Somali general was accused for rape, and he took a place. This conference took a place at Women, Peace and Security Conference in New York. And can you imagine that the topic of that conference was Women, Peace and Security, and that he was present there? Because it was in a way attack to all these women, peace and security. And here, when you have time in this presentation, you have also the text that will lead you to short video, basically, where you can see more about this situation. But it's a very common thing today. When we speak about other channels of diplomacy, it can also be a community diplomacy. And Commission diplomacy is diplomacy where we have independent experts who establish, for example, a commission which deals with some investigations. For example, it can be on either topics such as international humanitarian issues, or it can be on a situation in a specific country. But what is extremely important is that the Commission diplomacy, we have independent experts within organizations, and they have a competence to investigate the situation in certain country or in certain area. Committee diplomacy is extremely important because committee diplomacies usually consist of UN treaty bodies, such as Committee on the Rights of the Child, CEDAW, or Committee on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So the idea with committee diplomacy is that we again have independent experts who have different aspects of their work dedicated to human rights, and we will talk about a little bit about the methods that they can use, and they will be very important for the whole master program on law and gender. When we speak about the methods of work of committees, the first and the main competence that these committees have is to consider state reports. And this is what we speak last time about these shadow reports. So we have independent experts who are reviewing the report which was done by the state. But at the same time, we have different other actors such as independent national institutions. For example, the National Commissioner for the Protection of Equality can submit a report, but also organizations, what we already mentioned. They have general comments or general recommendations. And pay attention to these recommendations because they will be also a very significant part of different subjects that you will cover during this course. For example, general recommendation of CEDAW, general comments on Committee Against Torture, and so on. So they all issue general comments or recommendations, which also make interpretation of certain provisions of these conventions. So they can also examine individual and state complaint cases on human rights violations, and the topics which they deal with can be extremely different, from those who are in detention to those who were restricted in some rights, services, and also some of them have a competence also to visit a particular country, to go there on the ground and to investigate the situation. And this is in cases of systemic human rights violations. When it comes to position of states, here you see basically we have 10 UN treaty bodies or UN treaty committees and one subcommittee. For example, CERD, this is the Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, the second one, Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Human Rights Committee, and so on. So we have different, and SPT, this is Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture. So this is the only subcommittee, all others are committees. What you see on this picture is the total number of individual experts who are serving in their capacity of members of these committees. And then you see how many of them are women. And for example, for elimination of racial discrimination, we almost gain parity because among 18, we have 8 women. For Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the situation is the same. But see the Human Rights Committee. Among 18, we have only 6 women. And what we also see from last year, that we see the decline of number of women in these bodies. So we should go in opposite direction. We should have more women in those bodies, but unfortunately we have less. And what we see for the Human Rights Committee is the small number, which is extremely important. And the Human Rights Committee has the long tradition this UN treaty body. It is the most respected among other treaty bodies, and it would be very important to attain parity for this body as well. CEDAW, you will see that I marked in green, in red, I'm sorry, the name of these bodies. So for CEDAW, we have only 1 male and 22 women. Then we also have for SRE, so this is the Committee on Rights of Child, we have of 87 are women, so dominantly women. And we also see that we have more women for this committee of persons with disabilities. So we have 18 in total. So do you have any other comment on these numbers? See where we have a lack of women, where we have the majority of women, and then you can give me some comment on this. And of course, if you don't know the abbreviation, please let me know. And maybe to say, ACAT, this is a Committee Against Torture. Then SMW, this is the Committee on Migrants and Members of their Families. And the last one, SED, this is the Committee on Enforced Disappearance. Do you have any comment on these numbers? Anyone?
I find it interesting because CEDAW, or working with a person with disabilities and children, are considered soft topics, feminine topics, something that is more maternal or in a protection sense. So it kind of makes sense that it goes with the stereotypes for that to be more women engaged, and for other ones. I mean, I don't know, for torture, it's interesting for me. I thought it's going to be more, because you need to be gendered, at least consider gender in that aspect. For everything, but for that specifically.
Very good point. The CAT has really the least number of women. And we see exactly some soft topics dedicated to women, and we see the majority of women there. But for those another topics, which are also extremely relevant for women, we see that composition goes in favor of male, dominantly male. Okay, great. Any other comment for those who are online?
Well, I think the situation is familiar when women are only present when the topic is gender-based violence, or directly topics that only target women, and other topics that can be directed at men and women equally. Women are not represented. And also in here nationally and on the international level, the topics of women and child rights are reserved for women. Other topics, gender is invisible. So I think it's on the international level and the national level, it's always the kind of same situation.
Exactly, on a very good point. Any other comments?
We spoke with Professor Tuchkovic on Wednesday that it's a bit concerning that, for example, CEDAW is mainly consisted of women. It's a bit concerning that there is no men who are experts in this field. I mean, it's great that women are present, but it's a bit concerning that no men are involved and educated in this matter.
Basically, this is not the main reason why we don't have so many males in CEDAW. The women from the establishment of CEDAW, they claim that this is the body which deals with their rights. And that for that sake, it is extremely important that women who can understand autonomy of body, reproductive rights, all other aspects of basically being, female, is reserved for females. So even if you have males who are interested and who are experts, to be members of CEDAW, it is found in international arena as very annoying, and not accepted. So in a way, it's not having,
it's good. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I
you understand. Yeah. So it's a very interesting dynamic, because usually among 23 members, because this is the committee which has really the highest number of members, they were always females, and now in this composition we have one male, and it's a very hostile environment, for him to be. But this is basically why here we discussed about the parity and what does it mean to be, what is equality basically, and why it is important also to have males to allow them to discuss about these topics. And this is why you will also find some documents who are claiming very recently that women need male allies, that it's extremely important. But yeah, this is a very good point.
Thank you for clarification. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, that's...
Can I ask you for other bodies, for example, for for a person with disabilities, are they are represented in those bodies, also with Committee for Racial, I'm going to butcher the name, but are they represented there as a zero, or this is only the zero case?
I didn't understand quite well your question. We are talking about the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities,
yes.
Yeah? Okay, so the question is?
Are persons with disabilities represented there?
You mean, do we have a person with disability? Yes, we do. And for example, that usually the term lasts for 4 years, but one person can be re-elected, so it can be in total 8 years. Serbia had a member, which was he was a very, very active member, and he was a person with disability. So we have, in this body, several members who are members with disability. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but he was really very active, and yes, that's the case. So it's important, but not only and this is what Dušanka basically opened the floor for our discussion. It's also not only important that we have a parity, for example, that we have different, that we have equal or almost equal number of male and female. But it's also important that we undertake this intersectionality approach. That we, for example, if we speak about women, we also want to have in these bodies, for example, Roma women, migrant women, women who are persons with disabilities. So because this is really something that will bring us to diversity of opinions and views. Otherwise, if you have only female-dominated women coming from some very educated schools, then in that case, we will not gain the real, let's say, disparity that and diversity that we want to have in those bodies. But at least, it's good to see the numbers, because we still didn't come to the to that stage when we are discussing about intersectionality. We still speak about gaining that parity among two sexes. Any other comments? Do you want some short break? I just now see that level 5, or we can continue. Anyone?
Can I ask just one question before the break?
Yes, please go ahead.
Maybe I should know this, but I'm not certain. Can you tell us maybe more about how they choose those members for these bodies? What's the procedure?
The procedure is such that individuals who serve in their capacity of being experts, independent, they are proposed by states. And basically then the state, and this is how we also use diplomacy, the state then, is talking with other states who are basically contracting parties to that treaty, because only states who are parties to the treaty can submit a candidacy of their citizens. So basically the state then promotes that candidate, and we have some states which are more and less successful, and then they are chosen by the body within the committee itself. But this is why we say that they are independent and they serve in their independent capacity, but at the same time, they need to have a support of the state. And this is why recently we had some incidents in international arena when it was really discussed if a certain member was really an independent expert, and did we have better experts to serve in the capacity. For example, once in our case of Serbia 2 years ago, we had an expert who is really an excellent expert, independent expert on economic and social rights. He's a law professor and also very active in different forums. And for example, states when he proposed and when he said that he would like to have a candidacy for the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, he was put on the list because one Ministry of Human Rights really wanted him to be a candidate, and then the government withdrew him from the list. So he was not a candidate anymore. So without state support, you cannot go and be elected until the end. And that's one of the limits that we have when it comes to treaty bodies. But then when it comes to special procedures, it is another story. So the election of special rapporteurs or mandate holders is very independent. I'll explain to you how. First of all, we mentioned that we have this Human Rights Council, and I'm pretty sure that Professor Čurković also mentioned briefly Human Rights Council as a main subsidiary body of the General Assembly, which was established in 2007 and which comprises of 47 member states. So what we see for Human Rights Council is that this is a political body. What we know about special procedures is that these are independent human rights experts. They are not getting any money. They are volunteering at the United Nations, and they are usually appointed for 3 years with additional plus 3 years if they want to. So they can withdraw after 3 years, or they can stay, and in that case, they can be mandate holders for 6 years in total. What is different than with treaty bodies is that the mandate holders are not connected with states. So the states are not proposing their candidacy. The candidacy is open when the Human Rights Council decides that a special procedure needs to be established. And for example, they establish a special rapporteur on freedom of expression. And then they open the call for the post. And then on the website of the you can find these posts which are open for mandate holders. You need a CV, which corresponds to qualifications which are for this job, and everyone who is, and then after submission of application, the one committee which is established by the Human Rights Council is basically selecting shortlisted candidates, so those who are the best, and they provide an interview to mandate holders. And when they provide, and after the interview, they make a list of 3 candidates who are those that can be appointed. So the list goes 1, 2, 3. And then the president of the Human Rights Council either support this view of the committee and vote for the first on the list, or sometimes in some rare cases, and this is what we had recently with a special rapporteur on migrant rights, the president votes for the second, for example. He believes for some reason that the second one is better than the first one. And then the Human Rights Council votes, and with the majority of votes, they will decide who will be appointed. So it's absolutely not connected with states, and it can happen that states who are members of the Human Rights Council, that they work against their citizens because they're independent experts, and they don't want to see that expert in special procedures. And it's happening, but usually if the candidate is really very highly qualified, which is usually the case, then the state, even if they vote against and also find allies among some other states who vote against, usually they cannot presuppose the majority of votes. And this is why states hate special procedures. That's the truth which basically exists. And this is why also some authors say that special procedures are a pearls of human rights system in the United Nations, because they are independent. They are also protected by immunities, but at the same time, they are not reporting to aid, and they only need to comply with ethical rules which are established by the Office for Human Rights in Geneva.
Are the numbers different between female-male special procedures and those bodies that we talk about?
We have different numbers. Usually we have males and females, almost the same number, but it's also hard to say because we have too many procedures. We have 46 which established, so that will come to that for different topics, and we also have 13 which are established for different states. So we have two different mandates. Even for example, sometimes special procedures, they deal with women's rights, discrimination against women, with violence against women, with freedom of thought, assembly, with judiciary, independence of judiciary, so with different topics. Or it can be dedicated to systematic violation of human rights in specific countries, such as Afghanistan, Somalia, and Sudan, and so on and so forth. So basically, we have two types of mandate holders. One are special rapporteurs, and we have male and females among them. And we also have 6 working groups. Working groups means that we have 5 special rapporteurs which comprise that working group. And these are working group exists for those topics for which it is important to have the representation of a representative from each region according to the UN rules. Because according to the UN rules, we have 5 regions in total. We have Western Europe and the rest of the world. We have Eastern Europe. We have Latin America. We have Africa, and we have Asia. And as I said, sometimes, for example, within the Western Europe and other states, we also count Israel, for example. But I said this is according to the geographical key which was established with the nations. Why it is important? It is important because we need to have 5 members who can represent exactly the understanding of different aspects of a certain topic in the region itself, to understand the barriers and also promising practices, because then it gives a very good standing of that working group. So for working groups, we have, again, working group on discrimination against women and girls. We have working group on enforced disappearance. We have working group on business and human rights. And when we see the composition of working groups, there are also usually there is a parity. But as we have 5 members, the one needs to dominate like 3-2, yeah. Or and usually this is the key. Except for the working group on discrimination against girls, the same situation